My fellow Ambazonians, this is Dr. Cho Ayaba. Happy Resistance Day. Happy Country Sunday. And thank you all on behalf of our people for what you have to go through just to have the right to control your own country. That we have to lock down our own country every Monday as a sign of protest and resistance against an alien regime, just to demonstrate to the world and to ourselves that we want to be free, is regrettable. A foreign country basically marshaled its forces into our own country and took over our land and basically dismantled everything that we had built, and in most cases never replaced them, and in some cases institutionalized repressive systems that deprive us of basic rights of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of even conscience. Just to think privately was even criminalized. There were times laws were enacted to prevent 3 persons from standing together. Those 3 persons could even be families, so they criminalized families. Men of certain ages were systematically harassed. So being sometimes 16, 17, you were criminalized for being that age. Speaking English was criminalized because you were identified as part of a people that should be subjugated. There's so many things I can list that we have never thought of were instituted by the enemy state to deprive you of the basic survival instinct. We had to depend on them. And we are not talking here about a country that is apologetic. We are talking about an arrogant state that for 60 years has insisted it's their way or the grave for us. So each time you lock down on Mondays, it's not simply an act of resistance. It's important you reflect why you do so, why you want to be free. We are not talking about a country that sometimes would even allow our chiefs and our fonds to administer our chiefdoms and fondoms the way it suits us. They criminalize those who resist their influence. They bribe the chiefs. Where force has not worked, bribery and corruption. Where both has not worked, they have come amongst us, recruited so many of us, giving them little opportunities, and then use them to become an instrument of their oppressive system. That's how they took over even our psyche. They took over our emotions. Because you have one of yours as part of them that brings you opportunities. You pay allegiance to them against yours for your own personal survival. That's how deadly it had become. All peoples across the globe have resisted this kind of intrusion. Whether it's the Kurds, the Jews, they rose up against this kind of intrusion into their way of beliefs, their thought patterns. La Republic basically hijacked us like a cancer and ate us from inside. So it's not simply about taking your own country and establishing your own government, your own economic system. It's about creating an environment within which you can freely think, that you do not need to bribe your way to have an opportunity, that you do not need to sell your conscience to feed your child, that you do not need to betray your own people to become relevant in the society. It's about our humanity. It's about our sanity as human beings. And that on the day you leave this world and people speak of your time on planet Earth, they remember you for the wonderful things you did, not for the treachery, for the bribery, for the intoxication, for the lives you ruined, for the chaos you brought, and for the agony you brought to a people. This struggle is about our souls, that our parents will not be extricated from the land and shipped abroad to become babysitters. They lose all of their connections, their friends, their areas of worship, their sacred places. That we ourselves should have a homeland where you can simply fly into an airport and just the nature of the airport makes you feel proud. That the passport you hold is a representation of something dignifying. A country which is spoken of in great ways. And if you stay home on Mondays, you think about all those who are in jail, the thousands of people, your children, husbands, grandfathers, snatched away from our land and deported to a foreign country and locked up in infested jails. Kondengi maximum prison was built for about 1,500 inmates. It has more than 20,000. That they organize sham trials. And what's their crime? What's their crime? What's the crime of Barrister Ayambe, Professor Awasum, Pound 4? What's the crime of Teacher Tasang? What crime have they committed to be whisked away by an invader into their own capital? An act of the demonstration of power over you, where they could come into your own house, kidnap your dad, and don't even lock the dad in the neighborhood, ship the dad abroad to show you who is in charge. My fellow Ambazonians, this is a struggle of our lifetime, and I ask each and every one of you to look at the big picture. Below that big picture, there would be some simmering, some squabbles and schisms that sometimes might be irritating. But I always ask you to look at the big picture. Why we fight. And more importantly, who we fight against. And just imagine and how sickening that thought may even be. That this fight comes to an end and you have to return to the state of affairs under Cameroon. Their educational system, legal system, their policing, their DOs, SDOs, administrators, the tormentors of your life, the butchers of Mamiapis, those who burn down your villages, have never apologized, never repented. Each time you rise up, they never sit back and ask themselves, where did we go wrong? They send more tanks. They burn down more villages. That's the enemy we are dealing with. A fellow countrymen and women, what we fight for must be different. The strategy of the enemy is to use force. Where force has failed, they are going to use bribery and corruption. If it doesn't work, they are going to attempt to infiltrate our ranks and exploit the little differences we have and make them look so big. So you begin to question the reasons why we fight. You begin to doubt if we are going to emerge from this system to a more rapacious, oppressive system than the one you're escaping from. That's the work of the enemy. So each time you go online and you're calling your forces kidnappers, until you think you're scoring some points against Dr. Cho Ayaba, against the Ambazonian Defense Forces. No. You can't score any points calling us kidnappers. You can't. The South African whites and the international community realized they scored no points calling Mandela a terrorist. And those who gave him the Nobel Peace Prize look in awe and shame for what they did. Those who call Yasser Arafat a terrorist. The Palestinians didn't follow that bait. They didn't take that bait. You cannot score points by trying to undermine your own. When I make interviews, it doesn't cost me anything to slam Chris Arnold, to slam Sako, to slam other forces. That's the easy thing to do. But am I going to help the Ambazonian Governing Council? Am I going to help Dr. Cho Ayaba if I go on the BBC and I begin to slam others? No, I'm going to help Cameroon. I'm going to project to the world how divisive we are. And they are not going to simply blame those I am slamming. They are going to indict all of us. It's easy to begin to slam others. I'm very careful with my words because words matter. We have gotten so many people that have risen up. They don't know the difference between the pursuit of freedom and the pursuit of power. They don't know how to manage their egos. They don't know how to manage when they lose. There are days I get up as a leader, it's not a good day. For the movement I lead, for the forces I command. But I take every victory as an Ambazonian victory. Every failure as my failure, not an Ambazonian failure, but every victory as an Ambazonian victory. It takes guts, it takes nationalism, love for country to be able to defend others. I don't defend them because I love them. I don't defend them because they've done anything good for me. Some of those I defend have been so divisive, have spread a lot of lies and hate, sabotage. But I do it for the interest of our country, to project an image that we may disagree without being divisive, that we may argue without being quarrelsome. Even Cameroonians that have murdered us, there are few Cameroonians that can rise up and call their own soldiers kidnappers, or who can rise up and call their own soldiers terrorists. There are few Cameroonians that have risen up and called Atanganji as a murderer. Imagine the number of Ambazonians who have spent their entire existence blackmailing voluntary guys who've risen up to fight, volunteers. We are not talking about paid soldiers. And to our population, I understand some of the things our forces do irritate. These guys have been fighting for 5 years. We can analyze deeply what has pushed some of them to this level and how, as we have proven, the enemy has infiltrated the fighting space to burn schools, to kidnap. We know in Bamenda, elements being used by the regime to sell drugs. We know. To kidnap. We know. But this is the question you should ask yourself. Who will you run to? Those who burned down thousands of villages? Murdered more than 20,000 people? Destroyed your economy? Raped your kids? Kidnapped and deported thousands of your sons and daughters and detained them in their own country? And have sent roll tanks onto your streets that have shot at close range our civilian population? Or Ambazonian fighters who've so valiantly given you hope, challenged the occupier, but amongst which some have emerged to engage in harassment? Who will you bat for? The 60-year occupation, the butchers, the murderers, paid for through the exploitation of your resources, of brave men and women who fought for 5 years without pay, without food, without medical treatment. Men who have died of gunshots because they had no hospitals to go to. Soldiers who have been wounded and are handicapped and have no support. Traitors aren't only those who decide to work for the enemy. There are also those, and more dangerous they are, who in their actions and in their words do the bidding for the enemy. We will never agree on everything, never. But our ability to be a people is to understand that disagreement is part and parcel and will remain part and parcel of our society, as it has been for every society. And how we manage those disagreements, find areas of convergence, allow majoritarian rules sometimes to prevail, oppose without being chaotic, advise and correct without being condescending and arrogant, will make or mar our society. We should have been in Boya by now, running our own country. We aren't still here because of the strength of La Republic. No, they don't exist. We're still here because of our own people who manipulated so many, intoxicated so many, refused to prepare. You can't be independent and still depend on everything from the enemy. You can't talk of independence when you can create an army to defend that independence, to protect the peace. And that's what we did. We institutionalize the thought of being independent by creating the first institution required for the defense of territorial integrity. The army. We gave them a uniform. We took responsibility for their actions. We didn't shut down schools, but we knew long ago if education is one of the pillars of our resistance, then we will need to create our own schools. We did not only research and establish a curriculum, we asked the community to create their own schools. We funded them. We projected them. And rather than embrace them, some attacked them. Rather than embrace the army we created, they derided them. You can't talk about independence when you can't create anything. You can't talk about freedom when you are a hijacker. You only hijack ideas and institutions and want to make them your own. Independence is about innovation. It's about foresight. It's about vision. A better vision than the one that you've been, rocked into. Leadership is not about being a reactionary guidance of the status quo. It's about daring out of the box, thinking far ahead. We still inculcate the black people's syndrome. We don't want to create things. We want to fantasize. Independence is not a fantasy. All states that have declared independence have established an army and defended them, protected them. They've created a flag. Some of you denied our flag. They have been able to establish an impeccable identity for themselves. Some of you can't even call the name of our country because it was uttered by others. You refuse the flag because it was uttered by others. My fellow Ambazonians, to be free and to be independent is not fantasy. It requires hard work and it requires discipline, humility. We have watched in other liberation struggles. If today I will disagree with the Ambazonian Governing Council, I'm going to walk away. I will not try to destroy it. Never. And if I think it's not doing well and I have a better platform, I'm going to join that platform. Or I'm going to create mine. And I'm not going to use mine to try to destroy the AGOVC. I'm going to use mine to show a better way forward. We've seen disagreements in the Eritrean struggles. We've seen groups splintering, other groups being established and fighting harder. We have seen in the Palestinian struggle, the PLO, the emergence of Hamas, the Islamic Jihad. Some thought the PLO was not radical enough. They set up more radical groups. But in our own struggle, you disagree with the platform, you join the enemy. Or you spend your entire time on social media trying to destroy that platform, telling lies. No, they call that political opportunism. Nationalists, when they disagree, they walk away and establish better models. Political opportunists, they use the social media as a rallying point for opportunities for themselves. And so mind you, each time you hear people shouting on social media, those are not nationalists. They are political opportunists. They are pandering to the gallery. They are trying to feed on the uncertainty, on the naivety, and on the gullibility of a section of our people. Real nationalists, when they walk out of a platform, in less than 3 months, you see them establish something better, or they remain silent for the rest of their time, because they will not want to take any action that will undermine a nationalist platform that has the ability to give them freedom. Political aventurism has no space in liberation struggles. Political opportunism has no space in liberation struggles. To be free, we must be disciplined. To be independent, we must create alternative institutions. We didn't just ask drivers and motorists not to use the enemy's number plate. We prescribed what they could use. You can't simply fight for independence and create ungovernable spaces and allow those spaces to be filled by detractors. That's why we presented a comprehensive Ambazonian Transition Liberation Authority that gets our community organized to see if they can think about developments, issues of public health, education, sanitation. It's not only about waste disposal, it's also about waste transformation. When we stopped a foreign company from even clearing our trash, we stood our grounds until we got our own to be responsible for that, so that the monies they earn can be reinvested within the communities, not shipped abroad. Liberation struggle is about being sensible. It's not being loud. It's not fantasizing. It's not simply prescribing things that, never work. There is time for randomness. There is time for being sporadic. But you can't simply after 5 years have no consolidation. You simply all the times being sporadic. You will never have independence. Yes, we will remain sporadic, but we must also show that we can consolidate. We can institutionalize ideas reflected in schools, in transitional authorities, in the army, in the anti-kidnapping offices, in getting our population organized, in proposing a model for negotiation that is inclusive and that is sure of guaranteeing the aspirations of our people. Liberation leadership, the prosecution of liberation is extremely tough. And it requires people with good heart, that you can accept losing. You must not destroy when you don't have your opportunity. You must know when to shout and when to be quiet, when to shut up. We've come a long way, my people. We've come a long way. We've made enormous progress. We've projected Ambazonia internationally with the internationalization approach. Our triad approach has worked for us. We need to begin to show to the world what it means truly to be independent. We are the only people, when brutalized by the enemy, we rush into the land of the enemy to seek refuge. We are the only people, when we ask you not to go to the enemy's school rather than create your own within communities, you ship your children into the land of the enemy. That's a disgrace. Bring back Ambazonians, put yourselves together within communities, manage your schools. We will not allow the schools of the enemy to operate in Amazonia. We will dig them from the foundation. Every institution that reflects the enemy is banned. Everything. Independence means independence. That's why Mami Api died. That's why thousands of our people are in jail. And that's why thousands more of our men and women are up in arms. We must actualize the meaning of independence. It will be tough. If you don't start, you will never get there. Happy Country Sunday. God bless every Ambazonian.